Aloha, I'm Leslie Tagorda, Aquarius boss woman, brand astrologer, and designer. Not long ago, I was an unseen business owner playing small. Then, using my astrology chart, I uncovered the luminary I was meant to be. Now I help entrepreneurs like you use astrology in practical ways to crystallize your brand visibility for brilliance, impact, and reach. We are currently in a huge global pivot, and it's your time to be a leader, your time to show up for your community and contribute your magic in the world. I believe you are here to shine brightly online like the luminary you are meant to be. Hey, if you love this episode, please help me spread the word. The best thing and the easiest thing for you to do is to rate and review this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher. Every rating and review helps the algorithm that figures out whether or not this podcast is worthy and shares it with more people. So every rating and review helps. I'd like to shout out to Adriana Locke this episode, who left a beautiful 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. She says, "Business is always full of ups and downs, and I love checking in with this podcast for regular encouragement according to the stars. I value letting spirit guide my way in business and life as Leslie speaks right to the heart of it with ritual and astrological insight. What a gift." Thank you, Adriana. We'll be sending you a special The Savvy Luminary goodie bag. Each week, we'll select one review, and if we read your review on the episode, we will send you a goodie bag. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the astrology of the new moon in Gemini first. All of the transits and cosmic weather that happens this week kind of fit in with the astrology of the new moon. So I wanted to start with that first. Next, I'll be answering questions that were asked in my free Facebook group, The Savvy Luminary. The members in there have been so active asking all these great questions about astrology and their businesses. I'll also be giving you tips on how you can customize your ritual depending on where 2 degrees of Gemini activates in your own natal chart. So let's talk Gemini for a little bit. Gemini are a lovely air sign, mutable at that. So Geminis are chatty, they think a lot, they live in their head, their thoughts are like quicksilver, and they probably speak like quicksilver as well. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and the archetype is of the storyteller. And the storyteller is there to not only engage, but to also teach. If you think about all of the old fables, those stories were to teach the youngsters about how to live in this world and to avoid dangers. And so we connect, even now through promotions and marketing, we connect through story. And the Gemini archetype encompasses all of that. Now, Gemini and Scorpio are probably 2 of the most misunderstood energies. They get so much projection on them because people focus so much on the shadow expressions of Gemini. Yes, Geminis can chat a lot and talk a lot. Maybe at the low expression, could be gossipy. Maybe, you have to kind of decipher the fibs, but Gemini talks a lot and can change its position on things just because it can see so many points of view, thanks to the versatile, mutable energy of Gemini. At its lowest vibration, Geminis can get stuck in overthinking and overwhelm and indecisiveness, right? If you have anything that's strong Gemini in your chart, maybe you have a rising or a sun or a moon in Gemini, maybe you're midheaven, those are like key anchors in your chart that revolve around Gemini. So you can get stuck in those low vibration energies. But at the highest vibration, Gemini is curious. It loves to think. It loves to not only think and chat and talk, but it also learns to listen and engage and create dialogue, right? That's when we think about social media or we think about marketing. Gemini is that archetype, right? Because marketing isn't just somebody standing up on a soapbox talking. It's also listening to what their readers or ideal customers have to say and engaging and creating this two-way dialogue. The ultimate desire of a Gemini is to be heard, to be understood, and to be engaging. I too used to judge being a Gemini. I have a Gemini rising, and I think I've shared that here before. But as I learn to really step into the full power of Gemini, I have discovered that I have a huge message to share, and the best way I can share that message is through telling stories. Last week, I capped off my first ever challenge. The challenge was to teach you how to read your natal chart for business. And let's just say I was absolutely stunned at the positivity and the engagement. We had over 400 people sign up for this challenge. And I met so many people from all over the world. I met people from New Zealand and France and the UK, and then of course Australia, and I'm in the United States in San Francisco. So all these people came out to learn about how to understand their own natal charts so that they could be more effective in business. The conversation continues. I did a lot of the trainings in my free Facebook group, the Savvy Luminary, and of course you're invited. It's a safe and inclusive space for spiritual entrepreneurs to talk about astrology. And the conversation continued. I just see how hungry people are to know more about themselves so that they can really step into their own power and reclaim knowledge about how they're supposed to work and live and brand in their own businesses, and forgetting about all these like tools and tips that we think that we're supposed to do. There isn't a one size fits all. And that's what is so exciting, to see so many people excited just like me about using astrology for their business. So let's talk about the new moon in Gemini that's happening on Friday. Again, you know that the new moon happens when the moon and the sun are at the exact same degree in the sky. When they meet in Gemini, they will be meeting at 2 degrees of Gemini on Friday, May 22nd, or if you're on the other side of the world from us in New Zealand or Australia, that will be on May 23rd. Because Gemini is the ruler of the third house, and the third house is all about our ability to communicate, we will be setting our new moon intentions around communication. But before we get into that, let's just talk about the astrology for the week that kind of all culminates at this new moon. If you want to see a chart of the new moon, you can head over to thesavvyluminary.com and look for the show notes. I've posted the chart of the new moon. It's quite a stunning chart because you will see that we have 5 elements all in Gemini. We of course have the sun and the moon in Gemini, but we have also Venus conjunct Mercury at the time of the new moon, as well as our North Node that just moved into Gemini from Cancer last week. And all of this Gemini energy is forming a beautiful trine with the Pluto-Jupiter conjunction that we'll be playing with all of this year. So if we think about this, yes, the new moon is a time for setting our intentions and setting our intentions around communications. I'll talk later about where this is activating in your own personal chart. But when we also look at the Venus-Mercury conjunction. Venus is our planet in business. It's about values and connecting to our ideal customers. It's about our our profits and our prosperity. And when I say values, it's not just the value, like our own personal values that, yes, in branding, are so important to bring out your own personal values, but it's also the inherent value that you bring to the table. That's the undercurrent of whatever you're actually selling, right? It's the gift of transformation that happens after the transaction. I call this your brand promise. So Mercury, our planet of communications, right next to Venus, of course, if you think of those two energies melding, we can then talk about using empowering language. Like we're thinking about Venus as this beautiful energy, this one that loves gratitude and loves beauty, combining with our need to express it, right? So looking at all of these planets here in Gemini and putting all those energies together, when we're creating our new moon intention, you're going to find out that the more empowering and positive and your ability to express the value that your brand offers is something that's going to come to the fore. It's something that's going to need to be expressed. Now, if you don't have the words for it yet, don't worry about it. All you need to do at this time of the new moon intention is to put all of that energy, that desire of what you want your brand voice to communicate. Of course, we're talking about gratitude here because we have the trine with Pluto and Jupiter. Now, we know that Pluto and Jupiter, I've talked about Pluto and Jupiter before, where Pluto is the planet of transformation and it likes to clear the way. I talked about the energies of Pluto wanting to take things down and, destroy things a little bit before putting it together. But Pluto can also stir up a lot of fears and phobias. And when Jupiter is on it, Jupiter just acts like a magnifying glass, and Jupiter will magnify whatever is being transpired by Pluto. So we need to elevate our thoughts, right? Focus on the gratitude of change that is happening right now so that Jupiter can do its work of expansion. We don't want to expand our fears. We want to expand our optimism. And so during the new moon, when you are setting your intentions around your brand voice, all of this wonderful energy is going to support you here in creating a transformational message. Yes. Now, another really interesting aspect of this new moon in Gemini is the tight square, the exact square between that Venus-Mercury conjunction at 20 degrees Gemini with Neptune in Pisces at 20 degrees Pisces. Whew. So Neptune is our deepest, most compassionate and spiritual energy. It is an energy of unity and one that wants to connect at a soul level. This is not really 3D stuff here, okay? This transcends. And so one of the things that's going to be really key during this new moon is that we're going to have a very spiritualized aspect to the way that we communicate our values. Now, again, I know that this is a little bit intangible, so you're going to have to just trust me here. If you're ever going to start up a practice of meditation to get in touch with your spirit guides and your highest self to strategize your business, this is the time. Earlier, I was talking about Gemini being mutable and adaptable, right? We have those three qualities. We have cardinal, fixed, and mutable. Mutable is the ability to go with the flow. And with this new moon chart, we have 5 planets in mutable signs. Again, we have the Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Venus. 6 planets in mutable signs. We have the Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Venus all in Gemini, the mutable air sign. And then we have Mars and Neptune in Pisces, the mutable water sign. So this is just going to give us so much energy and versatility. One of my favorite astrologers, Pam Gregory, was talking about this Gemini energy here with our communications as being this divergent energy, this ability to split information into a multitude, a multiplicity, just like a prism. So imagine if we're putting our intentions into our brand voice during this new moon, it's going to have the capacity to communicate at all of these different levels. It's going to feel like we can communicate not only through our words, but we're going to be able to communicate through our emotional body, our physical body, our spiritual body. The Gemini is just going to expand it. Lots of sparkly rainbow lights through our brand message. Now, the astrology of the new moon, you'll see that the sun and moon conjunction during the new moon is also in a square to Mars, our planet of motivation and activation. This is going to mean that the communications that we are planting are also going to have an assertive feel. So again, it's really important to choose empowering intentions when we decide on our communication style. In addition, the Sun-Moon conjunction in Gemini is going to be trining Saturn in Aquarius. So much air. And this is wonderful because in our intentions about our communications, we can also intend to build something for the long term and for the collective. This is all about social change for all. I am so excited that we live in this time now. We have so much freedom of thought and power to really change things. If you follow me on Instagram, you can find me at New Moon Creative CO, and I'll be posting all of the astrological cosmic shifts that are happening this week. So let's jump to the new moon and Gemini questions. There were so many wonderful questions asked by the members of the Savvy Luminary group on Facebook. It's a free group, so come on and join us if you'd like. Amity asks, I have Gemini ascending. Will that give me an extra boost to my storytelling abilities? Well, Amity, from one from one Gemini rising to the next, this is just a great time to set your intentions around your storytelling abilities, right? So at some time during the Gemini season, your sun is going to be going over your ascendant. And when your sun goes over your ascendant, this is kind of this place where the leader that you're meant to be, as well as your radiant energy, aligns. So yes, whatever wonderful things about your Gemini that you love will be boosted, not necessarily because of the new moon, but because the sun is going over it. Now, if you have some intentions about cultivating even deeper abilities in your storytelling for your business, this will be a perfect time to set your intentions around those Gemini qualities. Tash L asks, I have double Gemini in 11th and 12th houses because of my intercepted signs and my north node in the 11th house. How will the new moon affect this, or how can I best take advantage of it? Now, Tash has really powerful Gemini. What sticks out to me most about this is the north node in the 11th house. At some time over the next 2 years, Tash, you are going to have a nodal return, meaning that the north node is going to meet the transiting north node, where it is here and now, is going to meet your natal north node. And this is going to be a wonderful time. You're going to feel so expansive. It's going to be like the lights are shining on you. Now, whether or not the new moon is going to affect this specifically, you have such strong Gemini that you're definitely going to feel kind of this light and abundant and optimistic feeling, especially when it comes to your groups and your friends and your ability to affect social change. Because I'm guessing, without seeing your chart, that the new moon activation is going to be happening in your 11th house. Look to where 2 degrees of Gemini will be. Look to that house and see where that is activating. And that is going to give you some insight as to where you need to set your new moon intentions. But because you have such strong Gemini, this month of Gemini season, you're going to feel like you're in your home element. Robin Z asks, Geminis are half of my ideal students. Is there anything specific I should be doing related to them and the new moon, either existing students or potential students? This is a great question, Robin. What is intuitively coming down to me is that this would be a really wonderful time to do some kind of special promotion to really call in your Gemini students. For your Gemini students, this would be time of celebration. So celebrate them in some way, make them feel really, really special. Now, this is the download that I'm getting for them, for you. Maybe doing some kind of special new moon ritual for your current students, or doing maybe some kind of special new moon promotion to bring in new students. Yes, harness this time. Now, Nikki S. and Michelle P. asked a very similar question. In short, they both asked, what does this new moon in Gemini bring into focus for our businesses? What areas of our business will need attention? What is it a great time for doing or stop doing? Which is a great segue into our next part of our podcast, New Moon in Gemini, and creating a ritual so you can set your communication intentions for your brand. All the way back in episode 4, I talked about how to create a new moon ritual. You can go back to that episode by going to thesavvyluminary.com and looking for the show notes for episode 4. So to answer Nikki and Michelle's question, yes, this is a great time for setting our intentions around our brand messaging, our brand voice, and all of those core communications. Now, sometimes finding the right words even for a Gemini rising person, words are so important that sometimes the words seem elusive because I'm holding on so tight, right? But intentions are not necessarily about figuring it out right here and right now. Intentions are the ability to plant the seeds about the result that you want when you're able to accomplish what you're going to accomplish. So you'll be setting your intentions about the kind of message and brand voice you want to have. Now, I'm going to go deeper into that. There was one question about what do we stop doing right now, right? So I don't normally like to think about like, hey, don't do this, don't do that, because our brain can't really process the negatives like the stop or the don't or things like that, right? So, I have a 4-year-old, so I'm always thinking about this. Your 4-year-old is running with a bowl of cherries or something, and you're like, don't spill the cherries. And the first thing that the kid does is spill the cherries because their brain can't really process the don't, right? So instead, we have to change the language. And this is, again, a very Gemini concept. So one of the things you can think about when we want to set some intentions is changing our language. Set an intention to only use empowering language. So for example, instead of telling my son to, don't spill the cherries, I could say, hey, slow down and hold the bowl very steadily. Because we're talking about Gemini and ruler of the 3rd house and brand communications, our brand voice, when I'm working with customers for astro branding, one of the huge pillars that we work on is brand communication. I call this raising your voice. Before we can raise our voice, first we need to find our voice, right? We need to really do the inner work to figure out what we want to express and communicate, right? We need to express what we value, right? So we can put that feeling and perspective in our communications, but we also need to then, the other side of value is be able to talk about the inherent value that somebody gets when working with us. And so first we need to find those things, right? So first you need to find your voice. And then when you know what you want to talk about, then you need to create the engaging brand story that helps you weave all of those pieces together. We talked earlier about the story being the piece that connects and engages others, right? We as human beings learn through story. And then when we have the story, then we need to consistently amplify our voice and use those words, use those hashtags, use our core messages over and over again consistently to get our message out there over and over and over again. So when we think about these ideals from raising your voice, this is where you're going to want to set your Gemini new moon intention. So I have some questions for you that you can, journal on, meditate on. If you're an earthy kind of person, you might want to dance it out or yoga it out or tai chi it out, however you get your inspiration, right? When we talk about new moon rituals and new moon intentions, it's about creating the space so that you can receive the inspirations and so you can do the reflective work to really uncover what you want to plan. So in the show notes for today, I'll have these questions here for you so you can go ahead and look them up. Some of the questions that you may want to journal upon are: how do you want to communicate effectively? We all have different communication styles. Some are easier, some are different, some are through words, some are through speaking, writing, video, photos, art. There's so many different ways to communicate. So how do you want to communicate? Another thing is, who needs to hear your communications, right? Who is your ideal customer that really needs to hear what you have to say? Who do you want to start up a dialogue with? Who do you want to build relationships with? How do you want your brand message to be heard? What about your core messaging needs to evolve? What does it mean to be engaging on social media for your brand? How is your voice being heard? Is your message clear? Where are you speaking up and expressing your truth? And are you courageous enough to speak up, to ask for what you want? Now, these are just some of the questions. This is probably one of the most important parts of your brand. I know we've gone through our Aries new moon, our Taurus new moon, and our Gemini new moon. These are so important in our brand. And so the time that you spend here will be worth your while. Now, to customize your new moon intention, you'll want to look on your natal chart for 2 degrees Gemini, and you'll want to figure out in which house does 2 degrees of Gemini activate. In my challenge last week, I taught everyone how to read their natal chart for business. So if you're one of those challenge participants, you'll know exactly how to figure out where 2 degrees lands in your chart, where 2 degrees of Gemini lands in your chart. If 2 degrees of Gemini lands in your first house, you're going to want to focus on your leadership and how you want to lead as an engaging communicator. If 2 degrees of Gemini lands in your second house, you'll want to set your intention around how you can add brand value with impactful messaging. If 2 degrees of Gemini lands in your third house, you'll want to set your intentions around creating engaging marketing messages using witty stories and teaching. If 2 degrees of Gemini falls in your fourth house, you'll want to set intentions around how communications allow you to hold space to express your emotions or your client's emotions. If 2 degrees of Gemini falls in the fifth house, you're going to want to set intentions around having fun with speaking and writing in your brand. If 2 degrees of Gemini falls in your sixth house, you're going to want to set your new moon intentions around creating daily habits and consistency that allow you to communicate effectively. If 2 degrees of Gemini happens in your seventh house, you're going to want to create intentions around partnerships and collaborations where you are sharing the same message. If 2 degrees of Gemini happens in your eighth house, I want you to set intentions around how your words can heal and transform. If 2 degrees of Gemini happens in your ninth house, I want you to set intentions around how you can use your words to promote your vision and purpose. If 2 degrees of Gemini happens in your 10th house, I want you to speak up in your career and in your brand. I'm seeing visions of public speaking or maybe even a book deal. If 2 degrees of Gemini happens in your 11th house, I want you to set your intentions around bringing people together around a strong voice or mission. The feeling that I get here is of using an impactful message to motivate and activate a group of people. If 2 degrees of Gemini falls in your 12th house, I want you to set an intention of how you can use your thoughts and your words to get into flow. So maybe this has something to do with creating meditations, spoken visualizations. I can't wait to hear what you've done for your new moon in Gemini. In my flagship immersion program, Luminary Rising for spiritual business owners, we have a special new moon in Gemini ritual created. We'll be creating our group intention and ritual so we can collectively plant our seeds on how we want our brand, voice, and messaging to grow. I'm so excited to have this wonderful circle of business owners together, all doing the same thing, supporting each other with their brand, learning about themselves, and empowering themselves to grow their brand visibility using astrology as well as practical business strategies. We do this together because we are more powerful as a community than we are alone. If you'd like to learn more about Luminary Rising, it's an open enrollment immersion program, and each month we have a new moon ritual, we have a monthly implementation challenge. Of course, we have tons of astrology, and you'll have access to my entire library of Astro Brand trainings. You can go to thesavvyluminary.com/rising to find out more about us. And if you join this week, you'll be just in time to participate in our ritual for a new moon in Gemini. And of course, the invitation is open for you to join my free Facebook group, The Savvy Luminary. It is a safe place where entrepreneurs connect, share their business challenges, wins, and share their inspirations all around astrology for entrepreneurs. Go to Facebook and search for the group The Savvy Luminary. Come join us and talk more about astrology and ask your business questions. That's all for now. Take care. Mahalo for listening to this brand new podcast. If you enjoyed learning about astrology for entrepreneurs, help me spread the word by sharing this podcast with your business besties, and hop over to The Savvy Luminary for links to episode notes and our free Facebook community where you can send me questions about astrology or branding, as well as connect with other like-minded businesses.